Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jesse Green.
Hello everyone, Jesse Green here. Welcome back to SavvyDentist.com and to the Savvy Dentist podcast. Great to have you company for another episode of the show. Today, I'm joined by author Andrea Putting, who has authored at least 5 books and notably has a lot of work in the area of compassion. And I think this is a really important topic because as I record this, there's wars going on around the world. And I think that as we think about our society and we want to build a more cohesive society, a more enjoyable society, the topic of compassion is something that is rarely mentioned in business, but I think it's actually really important, particularly in healthcare. And I think that there's a lot that we can learn about how we can create fulfillment from our business by adopting a more compassionate approach to our work. So, Andrea, welcome to the program and thanks so much for taking the time to come and join us.
And thank you, Jesse. I'm looking forward to talking with you.
You've written extensively on the topic of compassion. What is it about the topic of compassion that made you feel compelled to write several books, whether it's Compassionate Prosperity or Compassionate Purpose or anything else you've written? What is it that prompted you to think about compassion in such a way?
I hadn't really connected the word until after I started writing the books. So compassion is vital for our community. It's vital for ourselves. It's just a way of being loving towards ourselves and to others and incorporating that into our lives. I truly believe that when we do, that's where we find the fulfillment in our lives. Without it, it's kind of empty and shallow. So I like to bring in the compassion into our lives.
One of the things that we talk about in the work that we do with the dental practices that we work with is there's kind of 3 big outcomes that we're trying to achieve. And it's almost like a hierarchy of needs, similar to Maslow's. And that is, obviously from a business point of view, we want to, have cash flow. We want to make some money. We want to free up some time. But then we want to have fulfillment and meaning. And much like Maslow's hierarchy, I've always found that it's hard to have, in Maslow's case, self-actualization unless you've got food and shelter taken care of, and it's hard to find fulfillment at work if you really scratching around to make $1. I wanted to ask you though about the process of finding fulfillment in work. What does that look like, and what sort of things do people talk about? Because it sounds really desirable, but it also sounds slightly abstract.
Yeah, it can be abstract. So hopefully I can put it into some foundational type of things that we can look at. So for me, fulfillment comes not from what I do. It's not about making money. No. We need to make our living.
Yeah.
Your practice has to be sustainable. Absolutely, no doubt about that. But what I find is that people who are in some way incorporating what I call social mission, so they're making a social impact in some way, are the people who are finding more fulfillment in their lives and in their business. So I've spoken to people who have been mega successful, like a billionaire. I spoke to a billionaire about this one day, and he got to the peak of his work. He was what does he call himself? An architect artist. So he was selling houses that were worth billions and billions of dollars. But he was left feeling really low, I was like, well, what's the point? So I've talked to a few people like this. They just get to this point. They've had all the success in the world and they just go, well, what now? When they turn around, and so this artist, he spoke to someone, his coach, who was very wise, and told him, you've conquered your professional goals. You've conquered your professional purpose. Now it's time to look at your spiritual purpose. And with that, he just turned his whole life around and started to look at how he could share his skills with other people. And now what he does, I know this is an extreme case because I am talking about a billionaire. What he does is he builds whole villages in Haiti.
Oh, wow.
So that's where he finds his fulfillment, not in his everyday business, which of course he's loved because that's what he's done, but he's been able to turn that around and look at how he can use his skills to help somebody else. And like I said, it is an extreme case. We could easily say, well, that's okay for him. He's a billionaire. I've spoken to people in all different kinds of circumstances, all different types of businesses and different individuals who have found a way that they can do something outside of making money that brings them fulfillment. So what is that focus? What is that something that you can do given your limitations? So you're going to have limitations with your time and your finances. What is there that you can do that takes your business to another level, for one thing, but also brings you and your employees and your customers more fulfillment in your work?
I think that's really interesting, because I think what we're talking about in this particular scenario is there's a really clear difference between success and fulfillment.
Absolutely.
And so I'm just wondering, just so before we kind of get into the meat and potatoes of the conversation, could I get your thoughts about a definition of each of those terms? Because I have my own, but I just want to make sure that I'm not assuming things or presuming things that might take us a little off track. So could I just get you to describe what you see as a definition of success versus one of fulfillment?
Yeah, that's a good question. The subtitle of Compassionate Prosperity is When Success is Not Enough.
Yeah,
is
wow.
Because people who have found that success have just been, what now? So success, I guess there's different ways of people looking at success. So for me, I could say success is when I find fulfillment because I'm looking at a different way. But when you're in a business, success is about reaching those goals, reaching those finances, reaching your KPIs, getting to your how many clients you have, how much money you're making, that your business is sustainable in what it's doing is generally what a business success looks like.
Yeah.
So you've got the clients, you've got the finances, and the business is going to keep running with or without you. Fulfillment is a different thing. Fulfillment comes from the heart. Your fulfillment is when you get to the end of the day and feel good about yourself. You feel good about the work that you do. You feel good that you've actually made a difference. So that's where I see fulfillment, because it's really the heart-centered. So success is kind of like the mind focus, where fulfillment is more about the heart.
So why is it that fulfillment for some people is not quite an afterthought, but success seems to be front and center? It's a shiny, bright object that's screaming for attention. What is it that allows people to kind of focus almost exclusively on success, and only when they achieve a degree of success, they have that epiphany and go, is this it? What is it that's missing in that journey? Why are we not talking about fulfillment earlier in the journey, and why are we waiting to accumulate $1 billion in this person's case, which, again, I don't know this person, so I don't want to sound critical, but why did that question of fulfillment not come up earlier in that journey, or indeed other people's journey?
I think that there's a few elements with this. One is the major one in that we live in a materialistic world, and we're given the focus from a very early stage in our business about reaching those goals. We're all about the goal centered. We're about how much we do make. It's very much about that. We need to fulfill those things. We've got to set ourselves up. We've got to have supply for our families. We've got to support them. We've got to have a house. We've got to do this. We've got to get the cars. And then we want the holidays. We want this. We want that. We want this. So we're building up our financial success. That is where society has taken our thinking. It's a capitalistic way of looking at things, and we've been all been sucked right into that. We do need to support ourselves and our families, and that's fair enough. Our thinking gets stuck on that level. So it's only at some stage when we start to, we think, oh, when I get there, I'll be happy. When I get to the next goal, I'll be happy. When I make $1 million, I'll be happy, and I'll be able to have this, that, and the other thing. And it's only when we get there that we just go, well, hang on a minute. I thought I'd be happy here, but I'm still working hard. I'm still striving. I'm still looking for that next goal, but it's not doing it. So it kind of comes because of those things when we don't focus on it. We don't start with that, and for understandable reasons. So it's really us getting back into that and going, well, what is it? So it's only the few people who don't need to worry about where they're getting money from.
It's interesting. In psychology, there's a concept called the hedonic treadmill. And it's a bit like, you buy a new car and you get that sugar hit for a little while, then all of a sudden your happiness tends to drift back to its previous level. And I think what I'm hearing you say, if I've got this correct, is that in the materialistic world that we live in, we're chasing happiness and fulfillment in the wrong place. We think that when I get this thing, house, car, holiday, whatever it is, it's going to be the thing that brings me happiness, satisfaction, fulfillment. And of course, we know that it doesn't. And we know that our level of happiness and satisfaction tends to revert back to a kind of baseline norm. There was a study a little while ago, and I can't quite remember the details of it, so I'm probably going to butcher this horribly. But there was a study, I believe, that basically showed that as soon as your essential needs were met, from a financial point of view, that increases in, I suppose, wealth or income, particularly income, didn't really materially improve happiness. Coming back to then, if we've been looking in the wrong place for satisfaction and fulfillment, where should we be looking for satisfaction and fulfillment instead of the material things, which we know don't bring that happiness and fulfillment? Where should we be looking instead?
Yeah. I could blow my own trumpet and say, well, we need to get into social mission. That's a broad way of looking at it. I can go into more simpler. It's about listening to our hearts, to forget about what everyone else is telling you about. You've got to go for your why. You've got to find your why. You've got to go beyond the why. Not think about that kind of stuff. But what is it that moves you? What is it that is speaking to your heart? What is it that you can't not do? So that can result in being involved in social mission, which is wonderful. And there's lots of ways to be involved in social mission. And for some people, I can find that even just whatever their passion is, it might be writing. As a writer, I can say that one. They might get extreme joy out of that, and having somebody else read their book is pure joy. So basically, I find that most people are going to find fulfillment when they are doing something that makes other people happy. It all comes down to this thing about making a difference, and I strongly believe we all want to make a difference. When we make a difference in someone else's life, then we find that we feel worthy, and that's where we find our fulfillment.
For many years, I was a card-carrying fan of the Start With Why movement, and I really kind of got it when I hear Simon Sinek speak. I go, yes, that's amazing. Then I always felt really lucky that I could, fairly easily articulate the reason why I do things. And really honestly, my why is to have interesting conversations with interesting people. And podcast is one expression of that. The coaching work I do is another. Some of the other things I do is, again, an extension of that. But I also recognize that that's not easy for some people to uncover their sense of why. And it was recently that I kind of had this epiphany and thought, you know what, I feel like in some ways that book has done a bit of a disservice to lots of people, because if you can't readily articulate your why, it was almost like there was something deficient or there was something wrong with you, or, you're just doing the work and just doing the work without, this why. But I really like what you said about moving beyond that, because I think we all understand what moves us. We all understand what inspires us. And that whole concept of social mission, I think, is really important. We recently, as an example, partnered with Greg Page, the original Yellow Wiggle, to help him spread his message around getting defibrillators, registered onto a database so that in the event of a cardiac emergency, people can find them easily, et cetera, et cetera. And people say, well, why did you get involved with that, Jesse? Is it because Greg's a wiggle? I mean, yeah, Greg's a wiggle. That's great.
I listened to that episode, so I understand what you're talking about.
Oh, thank you. And he's a lovely guy, but that's not the reason why we got involved. The reason why we got involved is because I just felt that as dentists, we could do something really useful and productive and helpful, right? There's no big why behind it, but it feels like an engaging social mission. So can we just spend a moment sitting on this divide between why and social mission, or why and what makes your heart light up? I guess I want to try and draw some distinctions there if we can.
Yeah. I feel that the why is kind of getting it's the story you tell other people to get them on board. But it's not what drives us. It can be in a materialistic world. I think it drives us. But when it comes to what speaks to our heart, I often find that there is no why. So one of my own social missions is Chocolate and Coffee Day for Religious Harmony. And when I looked at that and tried to pull out a why, I was like, well, there is no why. I am a white Christian woman who was brought up in the White Australia policy era. I've never experienced prejudice.
No.
Yet here I am with this drive to do something to help heal the community, to help heal prejudice in the world. But I have no why. It's just something that I feel passionate about. So I realised that when you actually look at a lot of the social missions that people are involved in, there are some that have distinct whys. They've had that experience of something. So Greg's had the experience of needing that for his heart.
Defibrillator, yeah.
However, there's a lot of other people who are just going, I just see something and go, I've got to do something about this.
Yeah.
It's just this inner drive. I think it's just part of our makeup of who we are. And if we get stuck on trying to look at what we want to get involved in as far as social mission or finding our fulfillment, if we get stuck on looking at the why, we can lose it, lose what we're actually wanting to find. Saying all that, yeah, I've read Simon Sinek's Start With Why, and I do love it, and there is some really valuable things in there.
Yeah.
But it's not always the right place to start.
Yeah, and just for those people that happen to love Simon Sinek, just please understand I'm not trying to criticise in any way. I just think that there's, like you say, Andrea, I think there's a bit more to the picture than just that. Let's just move on to compassion for a second and around purpose as well, because again, if we're trying to think about our practices as a vehicle to achieve, yes, financial outcomes, time outcomes, but that meaning and fulfillment piece, compassion and purpose, where do they kind of sit into the mix? I think we understand compassion, particularly as healthcare professionals. Compassion is almost baked into our DNA, and if it's not, you probably don't last in a healthcare kind of environment. Intrinsically, we understand compassion, but again, I'd love to get your perspective on it, because you'll be coming at it through a different lens or a different viewpoint than perhaps we do in our day-to-day work.
Yeah, compassion is empathy in practice.
Ooh, tell me more about that. Tell me more. I want to explore that.
I need to phrase that one. So we talk about empathy, and, okay, we can have empathy for somebody. We can actually sit and feel what they're doing. But what do we do about it? How do we act on feeling somebody else's pain? How do we act on feeling on somebody else's experience? We can sit with it and go, yeah, I feel that. But what do we do with it? So to me, that's what compassion is all about. It's about taking that and going, well, what can I do about it? How can I act on those feelings? How can I make a difference in that situation? It's not somebody else's take on it. It's my take on it. So there's a lot of different ways of looking at compassion. And I think it's really about not just feeling, but doing.
I think that's what I was just getting at, is it feels like an active word rather than a passive word. When we have empathy in motion or empathy in practice, again, I really love that distinction. It's moving beyond the feelings and doing something with those feelings. What is it, do you think, that stops people potentially from acting with compassion? Why do people have the feelings and then not take the next step?
Who am I to make a difference? I can't do that. I'm just one person.
Okay, so a sense of, I'm not going to create big enough impact here.
Yeah, and not feeling worthy yourself, and not knowing what to do. And not knowing what to do is a damn hard one. Finding that, what do I do? What can I do about this is not easy. And there's also the I'm too busy. I know they're all legitimate. They're all absolutely legitimate things. So finding that something that does fit into your limitations is really important. I'd like to say to anyone who does feel like that at some time, because I feel like that at some times too. I feel like, what am I doing? I can't make a difference here. But there is always something that you can do. And even if you're just touching the life of one person, you are making a difference.
I have that thought too, I'm too busy to this, to whatever. And what I have experienced in my own life, and I don't know if this is common, and I'd love to get your feedback on this, is when something comes along that I feel energized by, motivated to do something about, I can feel that in a different way. When I heard Greg explain why he wanted to register defibrillators, it's like, man, I've got to get involved with that. I mean, seriously, this is a no-brainer. And there was an energy and an enthusiasm, and it was, frankly, in some ways we didn't have the time, in some ways we didn't have the resources, and yeah, probably still don't. But at the same time, you kind of go, well, it's too important to not do something. Can you help me understand what the difference is between finding the energy for that, but at the same time feeling I'm too busy to whatever for other things that are probably just as worthy? I'm trying to understand my own psychology around this. What's going on? Maybe I should just lie on the couch and you can unpack my mind, but help me understand what's going on there.
Find the magic is in those things.
Yeah.
It's what we can't not do. That is the most important. We can't do everything.
Yeah.
So you've got to be compassionate to yourself on that one, is that while there's a lot of other things that come along that you feel like, oh, gee, that's something that needs to be done. Maybe I could do something. You've also got to recognise your own limitations. Here I am talking a lot about limitations today. It's interesting. But we do have limitations on our time and energy. And so we do have to look after ourselves. Otherwise, we get to that, what they call compassion burnout, very easily. We can just give and give and give. So we have to go, okay, this is something that I can't not do. So what is it that compels you so greatly that you have to do it is the thing that you have to do. Maybe there's a way, in a small way, that you can support some of the other things. Maybe they're the things that you say, well, I don't have the time and the energy to support that, but I can give you a donation, or I can introduce you to someone else who can help you, or I can talk about that on social media.
Yep.
Do those little things that you can do for those things while putting your time and energy into that something that you can't not do.
Yeah. Let's assume there's people listening to this and they've found their thing, that their social mission they feel really passionate about, and they want to get involved. What I'm trying to understand as well, I think I know from my own experience, having been involved in a couple of things over the years, but you've had way more experience in this field than me. What are the dividends that people might obtain being involved in social mission? Because we're talking about this fulfillment piece, and as I said at the very beginning, it is a little bit abstract. It's a little bit hard to pin down. It's a bit like trying to nail down jelly, right? And it's just hard to kind of get. And I feel like I'm going to start quoting the castle. It's like the vibe you're on, or that kind of stuff. So I wanted to get your thoughts on what are the outcomes of being involved with compassionate prosperity. What does that look like? Why should someone care? I mean, we're all essentially driven by self-interest to some degree. Why should we care?
Well, let's start with business. As a business, those businesses who are involved in social mission, who are actively out there, the community knows that if they use this business, that they're also supporting some kind of community outreach or whatever it is, they are the businesses that people support.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And there is research that shows that people are more willing to spend a little bit more if they know that that business is going to be supporting whatever that compassion project is. So then it does help with the profit margin, because people want to support those companies.
Yep.
It helps the employees to feel good about what they're doing. Okay, they might have a mundane job, but what I do helps support this other project. So that helps them to feel good about what they're doing. It helps the business owner feel what they're good at doing as well. It helps the consumers feel they're doing well. So then the whole business has a different attitude. So it helps with the profit, it helps with the innovation, and because the consumers, the employees are happy, they're going to be more productive.
Yep.
So we've got the productivity, innovation, and profit, which are the most important things for business. It helps to do that. So it builds up that consumer business as well.
Love it.
On a personal level, the research shows that being altruistic has the same effect on us as having sex.
Oh, wow.
So it activates all the same brain chemicals and feelings that we have. So it's not a wishy-washy feel-good thing. Scientific research showing what it does for us in our bodies. It makes us feel good about who we are. So that can't help but being a positive effect. So I often say that I'm addicted to volunteering, and I think that's why. It really makes us feel a lot better within ourselves. So then that helps us fight off things like depression. And I've found that myself. And I've had people come up to me and say, that's so true. I was really depressed, and it was only when I started thinking about other people and getting involved in volunteering that it came out. It saved my life. But one of the important things that I always love to come back to is that I like to think about the difference between somebody going to work and being involved in social mission in their work, or someone coming home who isn't. So someone coming home who's just spent the day going to work, they just go to work, do their job, they get sucked into all the dramas, all the stress of that. That when they come home, what is their attitude when they walk in the door?
Oh, yeah, it's stinking.
Yeah. So what attitude does that give to the children about going to work each day?
Yeah.
Going to work each day is about earning money, and it's stressful, and it's something I'm going to hate. What's it going to look like if someone comes home from work each day? What they do makes a difference in some other way. They're providing, their business is involved in social mission. They feel good about their work, and they come home and express that to their children. They talk to their children about the stories of the social mission that they're involved in. How does that change our society?
Yeah, it spreads good words and good meanings and good actions. And I think like the feel-good chemicals that come from altruistic activities are really, really important because, I've heard some people say that if you get the feel-good chemicals because you're doing something good, is it really an act of altruism? And who cares? It really doesn't really matter, right?
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter. And I really love the idea of, going to work and setting the example for kids. Most people that listen to this podcast will have kids. And I think if you can go to work and make your work more than just work, about more than making a buck, but you're feeling like you're making a difference in people's lives, and you come home and you're enthused and energized about that, then of course that is going to be contagious. And as you say, I think it serves a lot of good. One of the things I want to just touch on though, really briefly, is chocolate and coffee, or coffee and chocolate, because again, I know this is part of your social mission, and no doubt it makes you feel great. And chocolate and coffee happen to be two of my favorite things in the world, particularly coffee. I'm trying to eat less chocolate, but I'm absolutely committed to maintaining my caffeine addiction. I wanted to ask you what prompted that. You mentioned earlier that you're a Caucasian Christian woman, you've never experienced prejudice, and yet you've gone out to create chocolate and coffee to tackle prejudice, particularly religious based prejudice. Can you tell us a little bit about what prompted all of that? How did you come up with the idea? What was the impetus for it? What's it look like? And equally, what's it given you?
So where it started was back in 2014 when there was a siege at the Link Chocolate Cafe in Sydney.
I remember Martin Place.
Gunman wearing his Muslim garb and waving his ISIS flag took the cafe patrons and staff hostage.
Yeah.
Now that ended tragically. There was the loss of life of 2 innocent victims and the gunman, and we were all collectively held our breath. We didn't know if there would be retaliation against the Muslim community. The Muslim community was scared. They were taking off their religious garb in the streets so that they wouldn't be attacked, and they didn't feel safe in leaving home. There was no outcry like that. Instead, what happened was 150,000 people went on social media and said, I will ride with you. They were offering to ride the train, the bus, the ferry with the Muslim community so that they would feel safe and they would arrive safely at their destination. So from this, that sparked something in me, and I just thought, well, why can't we keep this kind of attitude? Why can't we always be saying to people, we want you in our community. We accept you for who you are. Why can't we do that? So 12 months later, I started the first chocolate and coffee day for religious harmony. and just encourage people to reach out to someone who's different to them and sit down and share in chocolate and coffee and have a conversation, listen to their stories, learn about who they are, walk in their shoes a little bit. It is such a powerful thing because, one, chocolate and coffee has all those feel-good endorphins that allow you to open up. You feel comfortable sitting with somebody having a chocolate and coffee. And so listening to their stories, it breaks down the barriers that divide us and community. So it helps us to understand the other. And hopefully that just goes to a little bit further about seeing the similarities. We see the differences. Let's celebrate those. And let's enjoy the similarities and find those dreams that we can build on together rather than just looking at somebody and saying they're different to me.
When you started this initiative, what was the response? What did people say? What was the outcome?
Well, I get a lot of response like you. It's like, I love chocolate. I love coffee. I'm in. You would think it'd be a massive thing by now, but it's not. Generally, people do love the idea, and so people embraced it. And on December 15th, they'll invite someone to have a chocolate and coffee with them. They go to a cafe, or they might invite some people over to their home and sharing chocolate and coffee. It's been held in workplaces, schools, retirement villages, all sorts of places where people have just been able to share in the chocolate and coffee experience. And of course, there's lots of different ways you can share chocolate and coffee. But I do like to keep it to that simple thing of two or three people sitting down together and just sharing chocolate and coffee. So it doesn't have to cost a lot. It doesn't have to take a lot of effort to plan and organise a big event. All you need to do is, go buy a bar of chocolate sometimes you can get one for $1. Just share that and have a coffee. It's not an expensive thing for people to be able to share. So it's more on the emphasis of, let's get together. This is an excuse for people to just talk to someone new.
There's that great expression, and I don't know who to attribute it to. I think it's Stephen Covey that says, seek first to understand. And I think when we can understand one another, we probably realise that we're all pretty much the same. We've all got the same hopes. We've all got the same fears. We've all got the same basic needs, the same wants for our kids, the same aspirations for a happy life, all those sorts of things. And the things that separate us or make us different are much less than the things that actually unite us. And it seems sometimes we squabble over the most insignificant things. But anyway, that's perhaps a bigger podcast for other people to pick up and run with. But Andrea, I want to take a moment to say thank you to you, not just for coming onto the podcast today, but for the work you do, because I think it's actually really important. I think it's really important as we go through life to find meaning and purpose in the work that we do beyond the paycheck. The paycheck's important, as we said, but at the same time, that fulfillment piece is often elusive. And I really want to applaud you for bringing that to the front and center of actually the work that matters most. So firstly, thank you for the work you do and bringing it to a really wide audience. I know you've got an incredible following. But I also want to say thank you for taking the time today to share your wisdom, your life experience, your compassion for all the listeners here, so that they too can seek that fulfillment as they go about their day-to-day work. So from all of us here, really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Jesse. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
Ladies and gents, if you want to find out more about Andrea's work, all you need to do is head across to her website. And I'd encourage you to go to andreaputting.com.au. There's a bunch of stuff there. Please go and check out the books. Grab the books. There's articles, there's podcasts, there's a whole bunch of stuff there. A treasure trove of resources awaits you. So please go ahead and do that. And once again, Andrea, appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you for listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast. For more episodes, go to drjessiegreen.com/savvydentist. And to discover how to build a high-performance dental practice, visit drjessiegreen.com and download the free report.